Yep, thank you, Sebastian. Okay. I'll present you the disconnects, the dissimilarity coefficient networks. So it's a joint work with my two supervisors, Sebastian and Pawan Kumar at the University of Oxford. So English is not my mother tongue, but apparently there is a play word in the title, which is funny, but if you get it, please explain it to me in the end. As a French, don't get it. But I do know what they are. So dissimilarity coefficient networks are a new probabilistic model for structured prediction. So I'll start by explaining to you what is structured prediction. It's a prediction of a structured output given an input. So let's say the input is an image of a hand, and what you want to predict is a complex output. So in this case, the pose of the hand, which has some structure. So you can imagine that the position of the different fingers are going to be strongly related. So a structured prediction problem will predict you the pose. But what we are really interested in is to predict the distribution of the pose given the hand image. Why is that? Well, on that picture, I think we all agree that there is very little uncertainty, like the pose is going to be like this, right? But then if I show you this picture, or if there is sensor error, if you have some occlusions, then on this image, there is different probable poses for the hand. Like the top fingertips of the top of the fingers, you can't see them. So there's different probable poses. Another application is face attributes. So you have an image of a face, and you want to predict how a rater will rate the face on like 20 adjectives. So the uncertainty here comes from the fact that if adjectives are subjective, like how kind is this person, how beautiful is this person, then there is no like one single answer. There is a distribution over the rating that someone is going to give. And different people will rate the face differently. So that's exactly what's happened, actually. So this face is from the US 10K dataset, where 2,000 images were annotated by Amazon mechanical Turk workers. And I show here, so those are real annotations. I don't know how to get the tiny, yeah, here we are. So this is like 3 example annotations that were gathered on MT. And you can see that for 3 different, so one color is one annotator, and on the 20 attributes. And you can see that on some attributes, they all agree. So kind, for example. So 9 is like the highest score. So they all agree that she looked kind of kind. But if you look at introverted, for example, you have discrepancies among the scores that are given. Same goes for trustworthy, for example. So there is here, given an input, the image, a distribution to learn a complex structured output. Why structured? Because again, you can think that the way someone annotated her as kind will be related as the ratings are going to put to unfriendly or friendly, for example. So that's what a discriminative probabilistic model is going to do. So there is a true conditional probability distribution of the output, Y. So the pose of the hand, the set of attributes given X, the input, so the image. And the probabilistic model is going to model it via Q. So contrarily to Sebastian this morning, the true distribution is P, and the model distribution is Q. Don't get confused. But we want to learn that, and we want to learn that given a specific task loss delta. Why is that? Well, in the hand pose example, you can think of maybe I don't care about some fingers, right? Maybe I just want to predict the pose of the specific fingers, like, right? It's Tom Cruise in Minority Report. He's using those fingers, but I don't care about those guys. So there is a loss that I'm actually going to use at test time. And I would like to take that into account into my training objective. Why does that matter? Because if we had infinite model capacity, infinite training data, then regardless of the training objective, we will end up at the optimal solution. But we know it's not the case, right? So, and actually the loss that you employ during training will influence your performance at test time. So here is like a tiny small toy example. So if I want to fit a 2D distribution, so in white here, with 2 different models, in purple and blue. One model has a training loss, delta A, so the blue guy, that focuses on one dimension, and the other model, its training loss focuses on the other dimension. Well, what we argue is that employing the same loss during training as the one you are eventually interested during at test time is going to give you best performance on that loss. So that's exactly what I show here. At training and testing, using the same loss is giving the best performances according to that loss. So this is what disconnects are going to be. So they're going to learn a probability distribution, the conditional distribution, given a specific loss. And how are we going to build this? Well, I'll define the diversity of a distribution according to a specific loss as the expected value of the loss under this distribution. So for distribution P, the diversity of P is the expected value of my loss delta. When I draw samples from that distribution, compute their loss, and I compute the expected value of it. And the same way, I can compute the diversity between two different distributions by evaluating the loss with one sample coming from P and one sample coming from Q. So the diversity coefficient is built on a specific loss. And from this diversity coefficient, we're going to build, so it's div here, P, Q, D. D is the distribution of the input. We're going to build the dissimilarity coefficient. So it's going to be our training objective. What is it? It's composed of the diversity of the true distribution P, Q, the distribution that we're currently capturing with our model, and the linear combination of the diversity of Q with itself and the diversity of P with itself. So P is a true distribution. So how are we going to access samples from the true distribution? Well, it's going to be the training data that we have. So this third term here is actually going to be a constant. And we are going to draw samples from our model distribution to compute each of the diversity terms. And what's really interesting is that from this loss delta that I was interested in, if you use gamma equals to 1/2 and for specific type of loss delta, this training objective is actually a valid divergence function in the sense that it's measuring how Q differs from P, and it's minimized if and only if we are currently modeling the true distribution. So it's related to the proper scoring rule theory and the MMD estimation. So this morning, Zubin talked about model comparison. So MMD criterion has been used to train generative models and to also evaluate the modeling power of probabilistic model. So it's going to be this divergence is going to be our training objective. But since it is a valid divergence, we can also use it at test time to compare models. Another example is so the proper scoring rule are estimating how well a model capture a true distribution. And for example, log likelihood is a type of proper scoring rule. So the same way people report log likelihood as an evaluation of their model performances, we can report this divergence in order to assess the performances of our model. So if you look at what we need, so we have samples in our training data. We will have sample of X, so the input, and Y. So it's going to be the training labels. And we're going to need samples from the distribution that is captured by our model. So how are we going to sample from our model and how disconnect are going to work? So we'll take the input image, or the input, and feed it to a neural net, and along with a noise sample, Z. And for different noise sample with the same input X, we're going to be able to have different outputs, so different poses in that case. So actually, the distribution Q will be parameterized by the parameters of the neural networks. Theta here are going to be the parameters of the neural networks. And by using different noises here and mapping them in a deterministic manner to an example output, we're going to be able to easily sample from our model. And so I am Sebastian's student, so it's likelihood-free estimation. And we're going to be able, through sampling, to have an unbiased estimate of our objective function, right? So that's how we're going to do it. So we did that on the NYU HandPose dataset. So it's exactly the application I told you about, estimating a pose from hand images. And I show you here, so I won't go into details, but I show you here, so this one and this one and the last one are classic evaluation metrics for pose estimation, so based on the Euclidean distance. And what I show here is actually the value of our divergence, the divergence function. So as I told you, it's a valid divergence. We can use it both at training and testing. And in green is a baseline probabilistic model, and in blue is a non-probabilistic model, so a model that will actually try to predict only one pose for the hand. And we can see that the disconnect outperforms the other models. But what I really want to show you is the qualitative results. So the first image, so on the right here, in gray is the annotation that we had in the dataset, so the ground truth in that case. And in red, I superimposed 100 samples from the model. So the thicker the red is, it means that all predictions are basically falling at the same spot. So in this one, we all agreed that the distribution is peaky, right? There's one pose that's for this image. And you can see that basically all samples drawn from the model fall in the same spot. But for the other image, where there was much more uncertainty, then the poses predicted by the model are actually more diverse. They are all probable, they are all good poses, but they are more diverse because there is more uncertainty here. So that was one first application in the case of a structured but continuous output. Now, in structured prediction, many problems are actually discrete, which means that the output that you want to predict lies in a discrete space. And the true distribution P of the output given the input is actually a discrete distribution. So in the case of the attributes that I also presented you, the attributes are actually ratings on a scale from 1 to 9. So those are discrete values, ordinal values from 1 to 9. And classic probabilistic model will typically assume some distribution, structure on the distribution, and learn the parameters of this distribution. Well, what we're going to do with disconnects is we're going to assume no structure on the distribution. We're going to sample from the model, and the structure will be enforced by the loss that we're going to use. So the same way we did with the hand pose, we're going to feed the image to a neural net that will parameterize our distribution. And for different noise vector, we're going to have at the end, at the output of the network, a score matrix S, which is basically for one noise vector with the parameters of the model and the input. It will be a score on every possible discrete output that you can get. And then we just take the argmax of it, and that gives us one sample. So the image, one noise vector, which will give us one score for every possible output, we take the argmax. Another noise, another score for all the possible outputs, we take the argmax. And so what we show here is, the first thing that we wanted to show is that we still have a valid divergence on this to evaluate between two discrete distributions if we use a loss function that is based on a kernel on discrete outputs. And we will be especially interested in using a non-decomposable loss, which will give us structured, which will enforce structure in the distribution without assuming any prior shape of the output distribution. So maybe it seems a little bit obscure, but if you want an example of such kernel, intersection over union, that is widely used in semantic segmentation, that is one example of kernel on discrete data that will give a proper divergence function to compare those discrete probability distribution. But the main challenge here is that, so you remember that our divergence is based on this diversity coefficient, which is evaluating using samples from the parameterized distribution. The problem is now that with the argmax step that is non-differentiable, we can't, our all objective function is no longer differentiable with respect to the model parameters. So what we also show is, so what people do usually is that they use a surrogate loss, so like for example an upper bound on their loss, and they will minimize this, and this upper bound will be differentiable, but we don't want to do that because the main advantage of DiscoNet is to be able to work directly on the loss. So we derive an approximation of the gradient that will allow us to directly minimize our objective function without using a surrogate loss. So, and I will quickly show you some qualitative results. So this is one image of the data set, and it was annotated by 11 Amazon Mechanical Turk workers. I show you here 2 of the attributes. So each worker actually made a rating on the 20 attributes, but I'm showing you here just 2 of them. And so I build with from these 11 annotations in the data set, I build histograms of the values that were, of the ratings that were given, and I show you the co-occurrences of the 2 attributes with each other. So you can see here, it's kind of like the equivalent of the hand like this, right? There was little uncertainty. Well, for this image, for example, the guy is obviously smiling, so you would say he's very happy, or like he's happy, so he has a low score on unhappy, right? So that would be a peaky distribution. And now I'm going to show you if I draw samples from the model, so from the DiscoNet. So if I draw 11 annotations, just as much annotation as I had in the data set, I get histograms that are actually looking like what we had in the training data. And if I draw, it's test data, I said training data with the data set. And if I draw 5,000 annotations, well, we retain this peaky distribution predicted by the model. Now, this is the equivalent of the more uncertain hand pose like this. This lady here, so same thing. I show you here the annotations from the data set. And you can see that on kind, it has a multimodal distribution. So with a mode at 5. But the raters, some raters also thought that she looked super kind with a rate of 8, a rating of 8. And some annotators were as low as the rate of 2, right? So there is this distribution here has more uncertainty and also present more complex complexities with multimodes. And same thing, I draw samples from the model. So again, we recover the modes, the mode at 5, but also the multimodes, other mode at 8 and low values. And if I draw 5,000 annotation, well, the distribution is more spread out, but we retain the modes, the multimodalities in the distribution. And it's interesting to see that we compared it with a baseline model that was trained using a log likelihood objective. So since this model, in order to compute the likelihood, it has to make an assumption on the shape of the output distribution. So the assumption here is that it's factorizing over all 20 attributes. And you can see that it's actually predicting something quite unimodal. So the values are, like the mean value might be the same, but then it fails to capture the multimodality in the distribution because it made a simpler assumption, which we didn't have to do because we enforced structure using a non-decomposable loss. So as a summary, if we are in the case where we have to learn a probabilistic model under misspecification, so the loss we are going to employ is going to influence our performances. And we build a model, we build a divergence which is going to compare the distribution according to this task-specific loss that will be important. We make no assumption of the shape of the distribution, but just enforce structure through the loss. And it has some theory guarantees related to proper scoring rule theory and kernel maximum mean discrepancy. And we are able to learn a structured output distribution, both in the continuous and the discrete case. And as future work, I'm thinking about maybe employing it to learn the structure without the need of prior assumption in the latent space representation of an encoding decoding model, for example, but also investigate the loss, the impact of the loss that we employ, not only on training but also at test time. How is it able to discriminate between two probabilistic models? And that's it. Thank you. Yep.
How big is the size of the noise that you concatenate into the fully connected layers, and why is it that size?
So it's it depends on the application, but it's a uniform distribution, and it's quite small, like 100 dimensional. In the discrete case, I can't remember in the continuous one. But what I can tell you is that it almost does not matter. So that's something I didn't even cross-validate. I might have tried 2 different sizes, and it doesn't impact the performances that much. What could be interesting, which I didn't in the discrete case, is maybe to try noise coming from, so this one, even in the discrete case, it was coming from a uniform distribution, but maybe trying a noise coming from a discrete distribution, that might be interesting. But the size of the noise, I didn't see any influence.
Thank you. All right, if there are no more further questions, then let's thank Diane again.